Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Meebits podcast. This is episode 8, and today we have a special one for you because we're featuring a few members of the Meebits community who are building cool projects, cool products, but it's an exciting 3-segment episode. First, we'll start with Barry Sutton, who's building an incredible AI-powered tool to help artists get advice as they develop their practice. And then we also have Hafftka, who you might know from X. He has worked at the MoMA, the British Museum, and many other institutions, and came to talk to us about his latest drop, computer drawings. And last but not least, we set out to record a short segment with Justin Aversano. But honestly, the conversation got too good for us to cut it short. So you'll get a small preview of that conversation in this episode, and then you can tune in next week for the full conversation with Justin as episode 9. Without further ado, I'll leave you then with episode 8 of the Meebits podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hello to our first guest today, Barry Sutton. Barry, how are you?
Doing good, Sergio. Thanks, man. It's great to be here. Thank you.
It's awesome to have you here. Obviously you are, well, not so much of a new Meebit anymore. It's been a few months since you joined Meebits after the Meebco acquisition, and then you bought a beautiful Meebit, and then you just kept collecting more Meebits. So we're definitely very grateful for those votes of support and confidence. And then, but obviously before Meebit, you are a college professor, a photographer, you've been an artist all your life. So would you mind just sharing a little bit of your background for those who might not know you yet?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Happy collector of three Meebits right now. Yes. At these undervalued prices, definitely going to be adding to that too. Um, so yeah, I've been an artist all my life, as you said. It really I mean, when I was 2 years old, I was drawing faces, and my mom was like saving these pictures. She's like, "You're going to be an artist one day." I'm saving these things. So, it definitely started early. I had a real fascination with just like recreating my environment, like making something about that reflected where I was in the world. And so that was kind of like, actually, as a kid, that was kind of dormant for a while I was like a kid playing sports and doing music and doing a bunch of different things. But then as I went to college, I was a music major, and my roommate in college was an artist. And after one summer, we just started like, I just started working on projects and was super inspired by what he was doing. And ended up going out and buying a Polaroid camera from a thrift store. And that started the whole thing. Like I just became obsessed with photography from that point on, and it just kind of started from there.
And that was what, like 2 years ago when you were in college?
That was early in the 1980s. Good time. It was, yeah. So, but that progressed into a whole bunch of other things. Like I was a music major in college. I left school in the middle of the night in like a rainstorm. I just had this like brainstorm in the rainstorm. I just decided like, I don't want to be here. I need to go back to LA and study photography. And I literally packed up my car in the middle of the night and like drove back to Los Angeles.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so I was in Los Angeles, until my mid 30s, and then moved around a little bit, ended up in Miami. And all of this I did a lot of photography in Miami, and all of those pictures ended up becoming this first NFT project, 96 Degrees in the Shade, which was my entry to the whole NFT space.
Nice. And that was back 21, 22?
Yes, yeah. That was August 2021.
Yeah, that was the good times, but we'll get back there again, I think.
We'll get back there.
And now, since then, well, you're obviously back in New York City. I know you are a professor because I've visited your office. Tell us a little bit more about what you do there on the educational side.
Sure. So, yeah, this will be my 10th year. September will be my 10th year at School of Visual Arts. And I'm the chair of the graduate fashion photography program. So we have students from all over the world. Um, coming to SVA for a year to sort of get immersed in our program. Um, and we help them create sort of careers in the arts and art practices in the space of fashion. So we give them a whole lot of tools and background on fashion photography, the whole industry, and they just get immersed in it for a year and either come through it becoming filmmakers, fashion photographers, documentary photographers, producers sometimes.
I feel like photography is one of those areas where it's almost at the forefront of so many things, even within Web3, and people don't really realize it. Just looking at some of like the marquee Web3 artists, Justin, who'll be on the on this episode of the podcast after you, and then but then people like Drifter Shoot, yourself, Alejandro Cartagena, but it's also a place where that kind of like being at the bleeding edge of like visual arts puts you right in front of what's completely sweeping the world right now, which is AI. And there's so much like I want to say conflict, but not like in a negative way. Just like there's so much just things happening at that edge. I know you had an AI project, if I remember correctly, that was like post photography, and so you've had some experience and are now working on this new thing. But tell me a little bit more about how you see kind of like the AI space and the photography space merging in this moment that we're seeing.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great point that you made that photographers do seem to be on the forefront of a lot of this visual tech, technological breakthroughs. And I think I don't know why that is, but maybe because photography itself was sort of a breakthrough tech-driven art form. And it was the painters who, you know, like were up in arms when photography came about. So I think like as a photographer, for me, I mean, I'm always looking at like new technology. I'm a real like technophile. I'm always looking for like new software, new hardware, new cameras, new lenses, anything that can kind of help me um, express myself photographically in a new way. And so when, and photographers went through the whole phase from film to digital. So we've already been through that phase, survived. And now from digital to AI is like this new, I mean, that doesn't feel so new anymore, but it's still a new frontier that like photographers are trying to figure out how to navigate. I mean, it's really interesting. Um, I think, some of them are kind of some photographers are just falling behind because they're afraid of it and feel really um, like AI is going to come and like change their art or take away their jobs or, you know, that's going to be a negative. But for me, like from a technological standpoint, it's so exciting to get a whole new set of tools. So, I mean, I embraced it wholeheartedly. And yeah, I've done one, two, three, four different AI projects now that were sold as NFTs. And not that NFTs are the end all be all, but it's a channel for us to put our work out there. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, no, I always saw you as one of the, I mean, within the people that I follow, one of the first photographers or artists that really just jumped headfirst and started using AI as a tool. And now you're using it beyond just creation. I know you launched Cera, which is, I want you to tell us about it. But from my perspective, what I've seen is, and I know because we follow your journey along and we like chatted about it, kind of like put the camera aside and decided to vibe code a brand new offering um, for not just photographers but for artists. So first, why don't you tell us like really quickly what Cera is? Because I want to ask a little bit more about the process that you went through while building it, and then we can jump into the more specifics of how people are using it and what's next for it.
Sure, thanks. No, I would love to talk about it. So Sarah is an AI powered creative mentorship platform. So it's essentially like offers structured, thoughtful feedback from fictional advisors. And each one has a different voice, a different worldview, and they're all designed to help artists refine, grow their craft, kind of take you from point A to point B, or to just kind of go down the rabbit hole and explore whatever you're working on.
So I'm guessing this like the experience that goes into a project like this is not just from your own trajectory as an artist, but really your role developing new generation of, in this case, fashion photographers, but obviously artists through your, educational kind of like what you do at the school that you work at. How do you kind of like combine both areas of experience to drive what you've built?
Well, this whole thing really comes out of my experience teaching students. Because what happens is, we have a 1-year program. It's a very intensive program. You have critique classes, you have filmmaking classes, you have business classes. And after that year, I always wonder, like, how are students getting feedback on their work? Like, who are they talking to? Are they, hopefully they're staying in touch with their cohort, and they're, you know, s- keeping a group of people that they trust around to like share their work with and so forth. But I thought, maybe I could create something that would help them to do that. And so that's really where it came out of, just my desire to like create some new tools to help artists to get feedback on their work. And where that the other place that it came out of was that, with ChatGPT becoming so powerful, I started asking ChatGPT about my own work. So I started uploading work and getting feedback, and I thought, wow, this is super intelligent. Like, it's it's kind of generic. Like, it wasn't super personal, but it knew something about the creative process. And it was really like, it's very well like able to um, to identify what's happening in images. So when I looked at that, I thought, yes, I can do better than this. Like, there's something there. And that's how I started creating Cera.
And so, have you coded before? Like, have you like programmed any piece of software before this experience?
Not at all. I mean, the only thing, the most technological thing I've done, like in coding, is like create a Squarespace site. Like, that was it. And what I did to begin with actually was I started like I downloaded VS Code, and a coding app. And I went to ChatGPT. I was like, how do I do this? This is what I want to create. And it gave me some guidelines and got me started. And I built like just like a test app to begin with, just to see if I could like figure out how to do it. And it got me pretty far. Like, in about a week, I had like one advisor that was doing critique on photos. And it was pretty interesting. But then, and you'll be glad to know this, I was like in the Meebits DM group, and you guys were all talking about cursor. And I was like, oh, what's cursor? And I remember, yeah, there was somebody in the chat that was like designing this like 3D game. And I watched that whole thing, and I was like, I got to figure out how to use cursor. So that was the next step. I went to cursor, and then it just exploded. Like, it just like was like tenfold the speed of what I was doing with ChatGPT.
That's amazing because, yeah, that was the Meebits University class that we had with Aaron Wright from Tribute Labs, and yeah, he taught us or showed us how to like get started vibe coding. It's awesome to see that having helped in your journey with Sarah. And to me, it's always just crazy to hear that you're somebody that has never really coded and is using these tools to create something that will then leverage itself again to help others create and get advice and so on. So tell me a little bit more. Like, I'm an artist. I go to the website and then I log in. Is it a place that just immediately just gives me feedback on my work, or how does it really like interact with the artist?
Sure, it's super intuitive. So you go right now, it's in beta. So the only way to like get into the app to get the to work with the mentors is you just have to sign up for the beta. But it's like a 2-click process. It's super easy. I get a notification on my phone that like somebody signed up for a beta. It takes me 2 seconds to like get you in. And then once you're in, you come to a screen where it asks you to start a session. And what you do is you give it a title, you give it a little description of what you are working on. You can upload an image, like a sketch of something, or if you're more advanced, if you want to upload like You can upload up to 5 pieces to begin with. So if you want to upload like a few pieces you're working on, um, and then you get to choose your advisor. So in V1 of this process, the artist is looking through this whole list of different advisors, looking at like their descriptions and so forth, and just choosing one that might resonate with you. Um, and you click start a session. So it's pretty easy to get started. And then where you go from that is you end up in this chat screen, um, which looks like a typical chat screen. Um, on the left, you've got a panel that you can add new advisors to the conversation. And on the right, you have like just a reminder of like where you're at. You've got a little summary that refreshes of like all the things you've been talking about. So there's a lot of like little, um, there's a lot of like a little, yeah, just little helpers around the app that help you kind of move forward through the conversation.
Okay, so I'm an artist. I come in, I log in, super easy, 2 clicks. You let me in because we're friends, and you got the notification. I upload, a few pieces of work. Obviously, we're seeing here on screen how that would look like, and then what comes next? Is it like art critique? Is it like trying to sell? Or is it different depending on each advisor? I'm quite, I've never had to like, I've never really made art that I want to show people, but I would love to know, if you're speaking to like somebody that already has a practice or is just getting started on their practice, what is the main benefits they're gonna get from working with the app from like tomorrow on?
Sure, that's a great question. Um, so where I want to start out answering that is that Cera is an app that can really be used for everyone from like beginners to established artists. So there's a wide range of like different kind of feedback you get. So for example, if you're an emerging artist and you have a project that you're thinking about working on, or you've just started sketching out some ideas, or you have like some initial like pictures, you can upload that and you can say like, hey, I've got this new project I'm working on. You know, what do you think about this idea? Or based on these images that I've uploaded, am I on the right track? Is there something I'm missing from this? How could I better express myself? Like, how could I better express this idea that I'm going for in this work? And it will really meet you where you are. So it will take you from that point to start asking you questions about like what you're really after. What are your feelings about the project? What got you started? Where do you want to see it go? And it's, the interesting thing about Cera is that we've programmed this not necessarily to like give you answers. It's not going to tell you what to do, but it's going to start making suggestions and try to help you find the right questions to ask yourself to help you like find your way forward and forward through that process. Because, artists, like a lot of creative people, are just often like very big people with very big egos, and like we all know what we're doing. We know like, don't you don't have to tell me what to do. And so, that it's really like a true mentorship relationship. Like a mentor is not going to tell you what to do. They're going to try and help guide you, find out more about you. What are your goals? Find out what skill set you have and help you like use the tools that you have better and find new ways of expressing yourself and moving through this process. So it's really like a companion to like walk with you as you go through this process. Um,
I
yeah,
love that. I personally, and I mentioned this publicly before, I use, AI to share vulnerable moments and things that sometimes you're going through emotions, and right, we're humans, we're alive. Everybody likes to pretend online they're like perfect, don't feel anything. You feel stuff, and sometimes it's hard to talk to another human being because you worry about being judged, or you just don't know what they're gonna say, or you just don't want them to know what's going on. And I feel like this almost is similar from an artist perspective, where you can get some good feedback and questions answered without it like telling you, oh, you're right or wrong, which sometimes we just need like somebody like a sounding board. We need a soundboard. Obviously, if they have more experience, like in this case AI knows a lot more, it is a great complement to that journey of introspection that for me, as an outsider, that's what I see art a lot of, just like a really cool outlet for people's inner everything from talent to darker stuff. So
Yeah. Oh,
it's really cool.
definitely. Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's a really good analogy. I mean, um, as I was creating it, I was kind of thinking in some ways about like if this was like a business mentor, or if this was like, introducing you to like a panel of psychologists or therapists. Like, how would you choose the right one? Like, what would you say? What are the like? How could they help guide you through whatever you're going through? And I think there's like, especially in the Web3 space, it's such a it's such a tough space, really. It's tough to get traction. Um, there's a lot artists feel a lot of pressure to like deliver a lot. Like, I think, we're it's very transactional. We're so focused on like, what are we going to put out now? What are we going to put out next week? What about next month? How am I going to eat? How am I going to pay my rent? All of this stuff. And I think like what I tried to do with Cera was like take it back a step and say like, yes, you need to make money. And there's like, obviously, if you're an artist, you want to sell your work. So there's a path there. But like, let's talk about the work that you're doing, and like separate from that space, and like take some time to really help develop your craft. Now, having said that, there's a market panel inside of Cera, so you can choose from any one of four um, market specialists. So if you want to talk to like someone who has the voice of like an art critic, and someone who's going to tell you like, this is what gallery to go and make a pitch to, or you know this is, oh, you want to write a grant proposal to get like an art grant from Guggenheim or from somewhere, you can do that too. So there's a whole like, you can really get into the business side too. But I think from the standpoint of like developing your craft and moving projects forward and getting like really meaningful feedback, that's really where I wanted to focus, Sarah.
I love that. So I'm guessing from what you just said there at the end, this is V1, but you have big plans for the platform to grow. Give us a little bit of kind of like what you think this could get to.
Sure. Well, do the 30-second investor pitch. I mean, I think, it's a big market, right? Like, we're looking at like 2 million art students globally, 2.5 million emerging artists globally, probably a million emerging artists, or sorry, mid-career artists, and maybe 500,000 like really established artists. That's a nice, like, that's a nice crowd. I mean, it's not a Facebook or an Instagram size crowd, but it's like, that's a nice market to go after. So I mean, um, where I'm starting now is the academic side. So through SVA, um, their departments and the various chairs and different departments at SVA. Um, I'm doing some pilots there. So starting at SVA, next expanding to other universities, art colleges, um, individual subscriptions, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, and then beyond. I mean, that certainly should grow into like mid-career and pro markets, institutional licensing. That sort of thing is also, really possible. So
Awesome, man. Well, I love the
yeah,
ambition, and I love that it's a Meebit collector, obviously a good friend as well, and we'll be
thank you.
definitely cheering for you from our side. What's the best way to get in touch with you? What's the website for Cera? Where can people find you?
Right. So that, yeah, the website is cera.art, Cera.art. Um, 2 clicks, just hit the join beta, and accepting everybody at the moment. So until we get to like till we get to a maximum number of beta testers, yeah, come on in. I mean, I would welcome artists of all types. I mean, at all levels. I mean, I have very established artists using it. I also have students. So feedback from both of those groups has been really great and helpful. And yeah, really easy to get in. Email is hello@cera.art if you want to reach out. But we're also on X and X is Cera_AI, and um, yeah, that's where to
Awesome.
go.
What's your personal X?
Personal account is Barry Sutton.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first, guys. Sarah, my accent's getting in the way there. It looks Italian to me in my mind, even though I don't speak Italian. But Barry, thank you so much for stopping by the Meebits podcast to share your exciting project with us and tell us a little bit more about what you've done so far. And just, I think it's such an exciting time for AI building. So really appreciate you as being our first, Meebits community project. So we'll be around and we'll see you. We'll see you in Metropolis.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Really, really appreciate it. Great to see you, and thanks for giving me this platform to tell everybody about Sarah and just have a nice chat with you about all this stuff. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to finish episode 7 of the Meebits podcast with a very special guest, somebody who is part of the Meebits community because he likes Meebits. He actually made an incredible Meebit-inspired robot piece, which you can see on screen right now, and donated to Meepcode for our art vault. So thank you so much. But without further ado, Hafftka, welcome to the Meebits podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I do love Meebits, and it was a lot of fun making that Meebits. So I'm just happy to be part of the community. Thank you, Sergio.
No, I really appreciate you. It was the first Meebits art contest that we just put out on X, and it was awesome to see you not only engage with it but participate and submit in a very particular. Obviously, your style I think comes across, which is amazing. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about your exciting latest project that is kind of ongoing right now. The original mint already happened, but there's a lot of really cool mechanics that are unfolding as we speak. So, I want to jump into that. But before we do that, there's obviously a broad community that might not be too familiar with your background and what you've done, not just in Web3, but in the art space. Now, obviously, you have a very long career. Anybody that's seeing your X account, even if they haven't really engaged, your work sits in major museums around the world. You had a trajectory that goes back decades, and now you're in Web3. But can you walk us just real quick through, who Hafftka is and what you've been doing for the last, let's just call it, few years?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been an artist for 50 years, and when I started, of course, there was only the trad art world. So there was creating, there was showing in galleries, and I was very fortunate to be shown in some cool galleries. Not really in the beginning; it was kind of a struggle. But then a lot of museums started acquiring my work, the Museum of Modern Art, the Metropolitan, and many museums. So then I just kept essentially showing in galleries, going the traditional route. So, except that, and this has to do with my drop that's happening now, it's actually ending today. The burning is ending today. And in 1996, when my children were little, I have 3 children, I bought them computers because I was interested in them being computer literate. It was a thing for the next generation. In my generation, that's what everybody said. This is important. And, I had no idea and didn't understand what it was all about. I had a very simple approach, but I did right away see that there was the possibility of making art on computers. That excited me no end. And actually, it excited me with the kids. It was a lot of fun to explore very rudimentary graphic technology with computers, with an Apple computer, with my children. So I started making art with Photoshop and Painter. It was Photoshop 3.0, as I recall. And, I was just so overwhelmed and excited that, I thought, wow, this is really the future. This is the way to go. And my enthusiasm knew no bounds. And I published 2 little pamphlets and started sending them out to galleries and showing them to galleries. And the reaction was just unbelievable. The reaction was like, oh, we hate this. Go away. We don't want to have anything. This is ridiculous. And, the reaction was it was just so negative that it left an incredibly strong impression on me about the closed-minded nature of the trad art world. So then, many years later, I continued always to play around with digital technology as it got better. And of course, computers became a part of all of our lives. And so, it wasn't just graphic art, it was everything. You can't live without a spreadsheet nowadays. So, I just kept exploring. And then when the pandemic happened, I heard about the blockchain and I heard about NFTs. It's funny because it already started, but I was late to the game. But the moment I heard about the blockchain and authenticity and authenticating something so perfectly online, I realized, wow, the future was here and I was part of it. So I entered this community. And I don't, even though I do work in traditional media still, and I love all kinds of media. I really kind of see myself completely now as a part of Web3, even though I still do show in physical galleries. I'm going to be showing in Soho in the next couple of months. But what I love about the world in Web3 is the community. And what I mean by that is actually the connection that I really feel coming back from the audience. This is not something that you really feel at all in the traditional art world. You make art, it's very lonely, you put it out there, there are middlemen that show it. No one gives you any feedback, and no one sends you any love. And here I've gotten a lot of love, so I'm just very grateful.
That's amazing. You brought up the whole buying computers for your kids to experiment, to make ended up making art on them. I hadn't really thought about this, but my first interaction with computers back around those years was actually my older cousins in Mexico City had a computer, I forget which type, and they had some sort of like painting program.
Yeah.
And they would let me use the computer for like 3 minutes, and we would just like mess around painting stuff. I have no artistic genes in me, so obviously that did not go anywhere. But when you were mentioning that story, it just kind of like brought me right back. And then, as you talked about coming into Web3 and the community, for me, what drew me into NFTs was precisely that, but on the other side, right? I'm in New York, been in New York, I worked in Wall Street. I was tangential to the art scene because, it's kind of like a cliquey thing here in New York, and like socially, that's what people do, but never had the opportunity to interact with any artist. And then I came into like the Nifty Gateway days. I made friends with a lot of the artists, which just completely changed my perspective on this whole space. So it's great to hear it, not just from an artist that kind of got going through NFTs, but who really has that trajectory and that experience that you have and been so successful at it for many decades that you felt the same thing, and it's really what drew you in. And you've built such a strong community too. Like I feel like every single time I see some of my favorite people tweeting about art, like there's a component of Hafftka in it here and there, which is great. We have a lot of overlapping friends, so it's really nice that we
Thank you.
get to hear from you today.
Well, the community is really extraordinary, and really it adds a lot to me. I'm absolutely incredibly grateful. There's a lot of aspects to it. Of course, it adds a lot to me in the sense that people relate to my work and connect with me, and you make friends. But seeing all the variety of artists out there, and what's really unique about NFT and Web3 and whatever we want to call it, crypto art, the digital world, is artists come in completely pure and clean. So you see way more variety than you see, as you explain, in the clique of New York art galleries, because galleries tend to repeat themselves. They tend to copy each other. They tend to actually create fake movements. So what we have here is an authentic movement. It's absolutely incredible, and I love it.
Which is funny, right? Because a lot of what I see also sometimes when the market's a little slow is artists that came to NFTs complaining about the cabal and like fabricated movements within the space, which to me is just human nature, right? You rally around the people that you like, that you support. Doesn't really have to be like a financial incentive. Of course, in crypto there is a large component of that, But to your point, you can come in and just be not shown in galleries, but come to NFTs and really be discovered and create a community really, really quickly, which is extremely powerful and sometimes gets lost in the noise. Let me ask you a question though that might be a little different from what you were expecting today.
Mm-hmm.
But we were just talking to Barry about kind of just creating your presence online, and I feel like you've been so successful at that narrative of not only who you are as an artist, but personally, you and your wife, if you post the cutest selfies all the time from like the Brooklyn waterfront, it creates like such a bond with the audience. Is that something that you developed in kind of like the digital era, or is that something that you have brought on from the past and your career prior to NFTs?
Well, I was always very open, and I met people at openings all the time. And I was actually always very used to being interviewed because I was interviewed for many, many years in many different situations. So, and there's a bit of laziness involved. So once I was on X, it's much easier to make a video or take a photo. We go for walks every day. We try to stay healthy. I exercise. So we're always walking, we're always out there. The scenery is beautiful. Why not take a selfie? Why not say GM? I love GM because it's a way we all connect. I say GM to a lot of artists. But about the videos, it's much easier to just relate exactly what you feel in the moment. And so and you know, the revolution of having a phone with a camera, this is all part of, you know, I would have done it 50 years ago if I could, but the technology just wasn't there. So I like to take advantage of every bit of changing technology, and that also feeds into my art. So we're living in very, very dynamic times. It's extraordinary. So I get a lot from the community. I get a lot from the technology, and by changing, I feel alive. I'm 71 years old. I want to change and I want to stay alive and I want to have fun. This is a lot of fun. One of the most negative things of people's idea of what an artist should be is that you develop one simple style and you stick with that for the rest of your life. You know, I want my life to be, I want to live over 100 years old. So I'm going to go through all the styles and all the technologies. I'm shameless that way.
Oh, I love that. I love that because you just said how you take advantage of technology as it comes, and so that's what you did with computer paintings back,
Absolutely.
many many years ago. You decided to go and start creating digital art that, as you mentioned, was not really well accepted then. But two things stand out to me: one, you kept at it, and two, you kept it. You kept it, and it's now seeing the day of light today. So tell me a little bit more about this series. Is it much different from your kind of like traditional media art where you're exploring just the tooling or a different style, especially since you just mentioned that you like to explore different styles? How does it relate to your body of work?
It completely connects to my body of work. For example, the first piece that we released was a portrait of Yanad. I've drawn my wife. I love my wife. I adore my wife. I've drawn her in a million different ways with a million different mediums. So it was completely natural for me to draw her with digital tools. Same as the portrait of my father. I've made many portraits of my father, and that's the one that's in the burn mechanism today. So I never saw a separation. I don't think mediums create differences of what every medium affects the piece. Every medium affects how you're going to paint. Of course, if you use oil paint, it's going to be different than watercolor. It's going to be different than digital medium. But essentially, that's not what's important. What's important is your vision. What's important, what you bring to it. What's important is really your heart. Your heart stays the same with all mediums. Technology, artists are always dependent on technology. You know, oil paint is old technology. Watercolor is another technology. Etchings are another technology. Silkscreen, same is true with digital painting. I feel that the digital painting, we're just at the beginning. I think we're really just at the beginning because the tendency for software developers in digital painting has been to imitate watercolor, imitate oil paint, create brushes that emulate traditional media. Well, I don't really need that. I think what's really great is to try something completely new. And so I'm looking forward to the growth of this technology and more.
When you were making the computer paintings, and obviously you have an incredible memory because I can't even remember what I did last weekend. And you sent me a very detailed write up of the computer painting creation, back many, many, many years ago. Walk us a little bit through that. Sitting in front of your, Apple computers that you bought for your
Yeah.
kids. How like what goes through your mind as you're like exploring this technology? It must have felt pretty alien, right? Like, yeah,
No,
we're trying to emulate. It
it
was it.
felt amazing. It was absolutely unbelievable. Not only was it exciting when I was doing it, it was a new world. I couldn't stop dreaming about it. As I couldn't stop thinking about it all day long. It was so overwhelmingly excited. At night, I dreamt I was opening windows, closing windows, jumping into windows. I was like in Photoshop. Photoshop was in my brain. Painter was in my brain. It was just so extraordinary to like just discover this thing. And it was clear to me that the world was now going to be different. It wasn't just like another watercolor paint. It was beyond magical. Truly seemed magical to me. I still think that, it is magical. I mean, from the point of view of just human experience, having a new undiscovered realm to explore, that's the most fantastic gift that can be given to us as artists.
And you just gave me so much to think about. This conversation is just really opening my eyes to kind of like maybe how to start thinking about the future, right? Because to your point, you sat there, you're like, okay, this is the next thing. This was back in the 90s. Obviously, maybe half of our audience was not even born then, let alone planned. And now they're watching this thinking, okay, here's somebody that could see the future back then and dove headfirst, but also continue to build his practice in the more traditional way. Let me ask you: you want to live to 100? That's 30 years from now. What does the art landscape look like? What's Haffka's practice look like by then?
I'm just going to keep creating. I think creating keeps me young. Creating keeps me healthy. Creating, is a way of going into the unknown and seeing kind of feedback from the universe because we're completely connected. It's not when I say I'm going to create it, I'm a part of the universe. I'm connected probably forever because even when we die, we are become part of what we came from. So creating is actually connecting with this kind of humongous spirituality, this amazing, connection to everything that we are. So I can't make any predictions because making predictions is actually just a state of fear. I think everyone needs security, and we tend to make predictions. This is going to happen, that's going to happen, because we're afraid of the unknown. I actually love the unknown and embrace the unknown. I don't stay at the forefront of technology in the sense of, following what's going to come next. But like when AI hit, that I didn't know that. I know there were a lot of people that knew about AI 2 3 years ago. It just hit me last year, but it was just totally amazing. And that too, everybody's expressing so much fear about it, but it's incredibly beautiful and it's an amazing tool. And I started right away using it and using it in my own unique way. I don't think people should worry so much about using technology and that it standardizes us and that it limits us. Actually, we bring to every form of technology our unique being. Nobody holds a knife the same way, a fork the same way, a brush the same way. We bring ourselves to it. And that's the beauty of technology. So I can't make any predictions except to say it's going to be great.
I love that. I love this. Wow, I am so inspired right now, and so appreciative of you not just sharing your vision from back then, but how you approach the world and art, and almost that invitation to not be afraid, especially in this day and age where everything seems to be manufactured for rage bait and things that to your point might take away from that connected experience. We're almost at time here, but I would love to invite you back in the podcast at some point down the line
Sure.
to get your perspective again as to, obviously as you go through this new drops that are old things and old things that are new. I think there's so much more that we could definitely explore as we go through time. But for now, is there anything that you would like to leave us with and the Meebits community with?
Yeah, Meebits are great. So they look joyful to me. And I really think we should all just enjoy what we've got, keep going forward and keep creating. I do want to come on the podcast again, but I also want to come on in 40 years again. So let's fucking go.
I love that. It might be my AI avatar. I don't know that I'm going to make it to 79 myself. I've made some lifestyle choices in the past that might cut down short. But if I'm not here, I'll make sure to tell the team, the Meepco team, to not forget the promise that you're gonna come on the podcast in 40 years.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Don't think you're limited by the past. The future is unlimited.
I love that. Thank you so much. And last but not least, where the folks that don't follow you yet, where can they find you? What's the best way to keep in touch?
My last name on X, Hafftka. I'm on Instagram too. I have a YouTube channel also. You can find me online. I've even got a website. That's an old thing, but I have a website. So I think anyone can find me. I'm very present and out here.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. And I hope to see you on the podcast before 40 years, but definitely you'll be on the
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's fucking go.
I don't eat, I don't sleep, I don't drink until I get the work complete. And it is a borderline obsession, but also determination, because to me, like, the art is the food, the fuel for me.